Hello and welcome to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast. On this week's show,
something a little different.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Marc Blake, and I'm joined by my friends from across the pond, Marc Madison and Pete Moon. We did say that last week this pod would be a bit different, and as Pete just mentioned in the open right there, this is something different. So, first of all, how are we guys? And Pete, how different is this pod?
We're doing pretty good. It's been an excellent week for me. It's been. Well, I don't want to speak for Mark here, but this is quite a different podcast than, or at least a different format from what we usually do. Same old chemistry, just new talking points.
Mark, how are you, mate? Long time no chat.
Yeah, well, it's been at least a few hours, no?
Kayfabe, brother.
Kayfabe. Since we connected, yeah, for sure. I'm excited about what Pete's talking about. It's going to be something different. It's funny. It's almost like three guys sitting at a bar, just reminiscing about times. I remember when, and well, we'll get into that in just a second. But I'm excited about what we're going to be doing this week. Otherwise, on a personal level, just busy with life. And
if things were a lot better and a lot different, we would be sitting in a bar, a couple of beers, whatever your poison, and just chatting about today's subject. Yes, this is a slightly different show. There will not be any news pieces. This week and the next 3 weeks, we'll be talking about certain promotions, about the history of the promotions, about where we personally see them going forward. And today's promotion, as you may have seen from the Pro Wrestling Post podcast Twitter page, is about the biggest boy in town, is about the WWE. But before we get into the meat and bones of this week's podcast, if you could be so gracious to like and review and rate us on your podcast providers, that would be amazing and awesome sauce. I think that's what all the kids are now saying, awesome sauce. That would be amazing. We value each and every one of you, and we just want to connect with you even more. So if you could rate, review, and like us on your podcast providers, on your iTunes or Google Podcasts, and hit us up on our socials. We always drop our socials at the end. That would be amazing too. But enough of that. Let's take a trip to the past. I'm going to start this off by giving you a bit of a condensed history of the WWE. The WWE, we now know, started life as the Capital Wrestling Corporation on January 7th, 1953. The CWC worked under the NWA umbrella from its inception until January 24th, 1963, where the NWA champion at the time, Buddy Rogers, lost the title to the famous Lou Thez. Rogers was a huge draw to the McMahons and the CWC and were totally and utterly against the title switch. The switch happened and the McMahons left the NWA the very next day and formed the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, although they finally settled as the WWF on March 79. The longest reigning champion of the company's history was Bruno Sammartino. He held the title for, get this folks, an amazing 2,803 days. That's 7 years, 8 months and 1 day. That is a record that we will never, ever, ever see broken. The longest continuous reign of any world champion in all of pro wrestling. WWF has helped make crossover stars during its time. Starting with Bruno, it then went forward with Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, and also, not forgetting the major Attitude stars, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hollywood's golden boy, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Taking shows from dark and dingy halls and arenas to loud, brash, high-energy events, Vince McMahon and his WWE has changed the wrestling landscape. Even legitimate sports stars such as Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey have stepped foot inside their squared circle. Looking back, who got you hooked? What got you hooked? What was it about the promotion when you were a kid?
Funny enough, it wasn't anybody that was in the promotion that was tied to it. So one of the things that, and you mentioned all the crossover stars, well, funny enough, pop culture being what it is, when I was a kid, I can't believe I'm doing these when I was a kid stories, but I am. When I was a kid, it wasn't anyone within the WWE, but actually a celebrity on a very popular 80s television show that got my interest, Mr. T. Mr. T and being a fan of the A Team. So, in knowing and following and being so passionate about Mr. T and pitying the fool, by knowing about him, the crossover in the relationship with Hulk Hogan, and then being a fan of the film The Goonies and Cyndi Lauper, these things all seem to tie in together to the kid in me having these, enjoying all these things when it came to the media, when it came to film and music and sports and entertainment and heroes. It felt like the most logical jump into watching these guys that were larger than life. So that was actually who first gained my attention. So it was around, I want to say easily before around WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania, and the build up around that, and how they were everywhere from Saturday night's main event and creating those shows to Saturday Night Live and how they would appear on NBC, and the crossover appeal and the entertainment and the push that they had. Now, I wasn't really familiar with other notable stars. I wasn't a Yankee fan, so Billy Martin being tied to Madison Square Garden and in New York and what he meant, or Liberace, and I could look back now and see, oh, these guys were all significant in what they meant. Muhammad Ali was also tied to it, right? And they pulled people from so many different generations, so many different walks of life and so many forms of entertainment that it was kind of hard not to get drawn to it. So when you look at somebody like Mr. T and you hear him and you hear how much he made sense in being a part of this, it was what drew me in initially. From there on, I learned a little bit about Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and I learned a little bit about, wow, Roddy Piper is this horrible, horrible guy, but yet I'm drawn to him. In watching him, he is the bad guy that you wanted to hate. There was no, at the time, liking the cool heel. That wasn't a thing. These guys drew legitimate heat from what they would do to a Bruno Sammartino and how beloved they were, to how they would smash a coconut over somebody's head just to draw that reaction. So, and it was also my relationship with my grandfather at the time. He passed away about 10 years ago, but he loved watching wrestling, but he loved watching the guys like Whipper Billy Watson, and then hearing him talk about Bruno. And being of Italian descent, it was like the Golden Boy was this immigrant that came in and showed that you can come from simple means and just work hard and be beloved. He had no theme music. The chants of Bruno was what led him to the ring. And the way my grandfather would talk about him is like, he's good. He's good. And he downplayed it, right? So when he sees guys that are overly theatrical, I can't repeat what he said because we're a relatively PG show, but at the same time, he had that appreciation, and we bonded over that. Um, so I could, so I always held that close to me, and then I was following the Ricky Steamboats and Dynamite Kids, and the technicians always got my. They were always drawn. They always got my attention. Sorry. And so knowing that they always got my attention, I was always willing to listen to them, watch them. When they would get hurt, I would feel their pain. And that was my early introduction to the WWEF, actually, WWF at the time. So, yeah, that was the
See,
start.
For you folks at home, myself and Mark are of a more older age than Pete. So I'm quite worried about what Pete's going to say, what his early memories are, because I'm going to feel incredibly old right now. But
oh no, you rest assured that that things will be just fine. Because I got into pro wrestling through my dad. We spoke about this briefly when we were talking about a Bret Hart piece that came out a couple weeks ago, Mark. Yeah, my dad has followed Bret Hart from his days in Stampede. And so growing up, WWF was always kind of there in the background. It was a thing my dad watched. It didn't really, I don't remember being that into it. I'd cheer for Brett in the same way that I'd cheer for the Jets, but like I didn't really understand what was going on. And then see, my journey into the WWF is kind of a circuitous one, because when Brett went to WCW, that's when my dad started watching WCW, just because it's where Brett is. And so a lot of my early memories, other than Brett on Monday Night Raw, would have been stuff that happened on Nitro. But while we're watching Nitro, we see this guy from our hometown called Chris Jericho, who is doing absolutely amazing things in the ring, things I had never seen before. I had never seen anyone do a springboard moonsault. I had never seen anyone reverse a top rope Hurricane Rana into a hold, of all things. And so when I saw him and the cruiserweights doing their thing, that's what really got my attention. And then when Jericho stopped showing up in WCW, and then we found out that he had made his way to the World Wrestling Federation, that's when we kind of switched back. And then, in the year later, you got Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Chris Benoit, other guys who were huge in the cruiserweight division, moving all over to the competition. And so we just kind of didn't look back, because Brett's career seemed to be winding down, and all these guys were about to hit their stride, and they were about to hit their stride in a new company. And then, yeah, that was, I got to see not necessarily prime Stone Cold. I think he would have been out at the time, but I got to see The Rock build his feud with Triple H. I got to see kind of the tail end of Ministry of Darkness Undertaker, which really kind of informs how I feel about the Undertaker. I think the incarnation of the Undertaker everyone loves best is kind of their first. And what else was happening around that time? The Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys sort of rising in the tag division. You had not a lot going on in the Intercontinental scene, but yeah, there was a lot to watch in those days. And then the following year, WCW closes, and they try to bring everyone in, and that was an interesting time. Not a great time, but certainly a moment in history to live through.
That is one way to put it. Definitely one way to put it. So with you being in a Bret Hart household, you followed Bret throughout wherever he went. Through that, your eyes obviously saw different talent along the way. So was there anyone else in WWF at the time that you saw was like, oh my God, wow, I wouldn't have seen him if it wasn't for Bret? Did anyone stand out like that?
I mean, I can think of guys like he had a run in with Triple H early in the career. He tussled with Mankind. I'm trying to think about other people that really stick out from that era, but Kane wasn't really a thing yet. Mankind hadn't really hit his stride as Mrs. Foley's baby boy. You look at that era, and so many people were kind of just there. I'm thinking of the Smoking Guns. I'm thinking of the Body Donnas. I'm thinking of the Godwins. It gets kind of hard to really see who was coming up at the time.
It really was slim pickings back then.
Yeah, really. Like who else do I really remember? I remember a little bit of Rocky Maivia.
Ah, yeah,
just a little bit.
Not even Dwayne Johnson wants to remember Rocky Maivia.
Yeah. I remember this guy who was like, he was chipper, but everyone hated him for some reason.
He was too chipper for his own good.
Yeah, I thought he was okay, but the crowd really didn't like him. And And yeah, Stone Cold would have been on the rise. I really would have only known him as a bad guy, or at the least sort of like starting to walk the fine lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And really, all these people wouldn't really be the full package until after I came back to WWE, or after I started paying attention to WWF.
What about you, Mark? I mean, you've gone like proper old school there. This was there anyone that stood out back then when you was watching it with your grandfather that you was like, wow?
I was always, and I still to this day, and like I've told this to anybody that would be willing to listen, to sit and interview Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, because he is kind of my measuring stick. Because and you got to understand, I guess, as a kid, when he would sell a throat injury, oh my God, I thought this guy was dying. It was just so convincing. Into some cases, you'd be thinking, okay, it's over the top, and I guess the way everything was filmed, whereas now, whereas somebody recovers in a couple of weeks, they're off TV for a month or 2 months, and it was pretty consistent. So you felt as a kid, man, he's never going to wrestle again. His career's over. And, call it being gullible or whatever, but at the same time, you think back, that felt real. It felt genuine. There was no kayfabe. That was real. He hit him in the throat with a bell. Oh my gosh. How could he do that? Why would he do that? Is he that jealous? Like, I mean, and all these really innocent feelings that you have as a kid, you're drawn to that. And then you look back and think, wow, I was really, really gullible. But at the same time, I was a kid watching television, captivated by the feelings and the emotions, so that when he rose up, you were right there with him. When WrestleMania 3 happened, wow. And it was too bad that the reign of Intercontinental title champion was so short, but he was always the guy. And him and Tommy Billington of the Dynamite, of the British Bulldogs, as a wrestler, wow. I wish I would have seen his stuff in Japan, and I wish I would have seen his stuff and the times he competed there. And I read his book, but then you don't get a real sense of the kind of competitor he was and the sacrifice on their bodies that these guys put on themselves, and the legitimacy of how that all came about. Yeah, those were the two that always in my mind, and I talk about this now, and are the ones that stand out. I wasn't a big Hulk Hogan fan, and he was the golden boy, but I couldn't relate, because if he's the All-American guy, I'm a second generational Italian Canadian kid. I can't connect. I can't relate. I've got brown hair and he's got blonde. He's got, like, it wasn't what I aspired to be, but to see, I loved martial arts films. I loved Bruce Lee. It made sense. Those are the things I connected to, and different strokes for different folks, but this just didn't resonate with me. I know it resonated with some, probably a lot, as by millions of shirts sold and fans made, but yeah. I didn't get a chance to see Bruno in his prime. I'd have to watch clips of it, but there was it isn't as, I don't want to say choreographed, but it wasn't a smooth transition move to move to move. It felt rough and rugged and raw, and punches looked like they were trying to club through you, right? And just a different time, right? But at that period, yeah. And then I fell out of love with what I was a kid of, and that took me away from wrestling for a little while too.
See that? I'm so glad you said that, because that was my next question. I was asking you to, was there a point in your childhood where you was like, no, this is not for me, and then obviously you came back? Was there a particular moment where you walked away, or was it just a gradual thing, Pete?
I've covered this on the show before.
Yeah, but for those who haven't heard this, and shame on you if you haven't.
Where have you been?
Yeah, I mentioned that I was about 2007. I'd have been 14, 15. And Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit passing was really one of the things that took me out of the product, because at that time Chris Jericho had been gone for like 2 years. He didn't seem like he was coming back, and like I said, Eddie and Chris, my heroes, my favorites, they're dead. They're definitely not coming back, and the circumstances under which Chris Benoit died made me think that maybe like they're not even going to talk about him ever again. They're not really going to draw the comparisons between newer wrestlers and Benoit that they'll do for superstars who show shades of Eddie Guerrero. And
Right.
so just this feeling that the product was never going to be the same, and that that not only were my favorites gone, but that I was never going to get that sense of closure that you get from seeing somebody retire was really
Right.
just like a huge part of my decision to kind of walk away. Couple that with John Cena as he grows into the unbeatable Super Cena, it just seemed like things were taking a big step backwards, and I didn't want to be part of this new Hulkamania era or I guess Cena Mania era, where really no one else seems to be getting over. No one else seems to have as many title runs for as long as he does.
What about you, Mark? Was obviously you touched on it there. You walked away from watching wrestling. What was there a reason why? What drew you back?
So I walked away around the new generation era, around, I want to say I was 14, 15. So I guess I want to age myself specifically, but there was a span of about 3 years where things were just so hokey and over the top. I'm like, so he's a plumber and he's a wrestler? He drives a car and he's a wrestler? Like, I know the idea of, yes, we can all have two jobs. I just don't know if, as a teenage kid, I wanted to see that. And I was changing and the product was staying the same. So there's a disconnect, right? Like a lot of others, if you can't connect to it, you stop watching it. Funny enough, it was the internet that brought me back. I'm not going to date myself, but Netscape. Does anyone remember that?
Oh my words, yeah.
Yeah, so way back, kids, before there was Internet Explorer or Safari or
Google.
Chrome or Google there was Netscape, this dial-up. I really think computers had pieces of wood in them that were so old. When you would use Netscape, it's what drew me to finding out rumors and stories about certain people. And I don't know why, but on my lunch breaks at school, I would be searching that up. So around 90, anyways, late 90s, before it was still like the tail end of the new generation, and Hall and Nash were still part of the WWE as Razor Ramon and Kevin Nash, and
Diesel.
Sorry, it's Diesel. Sorry, Razor Ramon and Diesel. Thanks. Before they had made their move over, we didn't really get access to Monday Nitro. I think it was kind of sort of coming along, but then it wasn't necessarily. Like, you would get shows, but they would air them at different times. So then they had these Monday Night Wars on I think TSN. Pete aired both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Did they eat? Yeah, I think they aired Nitro and they aired Raw, but they just didn't air them at the same time. And then at one point, we didn't even get Raw here in Canada. It was, I don't think we did. I can't remember. Like, this is early 90s when they were still advertising for IcoPro and
Hey.
had their bodybuilding competitions. I can't remember. It wasn't the Hammer. It was that small like arena
In New York.
Anyone know what I'm talking about?
Hammerstein Ballroom.
Yeah.
Was it Hammerstein? Yeah. It would be back then. And I can't remember us having access to watching it then. I think it came on in later years when it was more of a Raw is War or
Yeah,
That sort
I
of
definitely
jazz.
remember. I definitely remember more of Raw is War than New Generation Raw.
Yeah, yeah. So and yeah, and they had the War Zone and that came later on. But that seemed like that was big. They maybe had outgrown Hammerstein, and they were looking at a bigger arena and filling more seats, and the rampway was there. But yeah, it was the internet that brought me back. It was less about who so much as opposed to um, media. Go figure. A wrestling website drawn by media.
And what about you, Pete? What brought you back into the IWC fold, so to speak?
So, when I was in high school, I met another writer from the site, John Hill, and him and a few other guys were still into pro wrestling, and they would talk about stuff that was going on, and I would kind of sit back and poo-poo them because it was prime Cena-mania. So the first step towards me getting back into pro wrestling was CM Punk's pipe bomb,
Ah,
because I remember seeing one of John Hill's friends, post on Facebook about something that just happened on Raw, and I tuned in to see the replay that was happening later that night, and that's when I saw the pipe bomb for the first time, and that really made me consider that things could be changing in the WWE. Now they didn't, and I kind of sort of floated around for the next couple years trying to just checking in every once in a while. But around 2013, John keeps telling me about this guy Daniel Bryan, who's been around for a little bit. Would have been in his second year in the company when the pipe bomb happened, and he talks about this guy who's really good. He seems to be like kind of the sign that things are changing in the company. He's probably going to be, the next big thing moving forward, because, the Yes Movement, everyone freaking loves this guy. So I think, okay, I'll give this a shot. And I started watching in the lead up to WrestleMania 30. And so kind of witnessing the ascendancy of the Yes Movement and just that build behind Daniel Bryan. And then you had other things that were going on around the time, like Wade Barrett, you had Cody Rhodes, you had a handful of other guys that I probably would have known. And yeah, I remember watching WrestleMania 30 with him. It was the first WrestleMania I had watched in years, and that made me feel like there was this whole new direction things were going to be going in. And so I continued watching, and then Daniel Bryan got injured, and then Cena became champion again. And then I was like, okay, did I just waste all that emotion getting back into this product that now has to revert to a holding pattern? But then uh, John told me about this other show they were running called NXT, and that allowed me to watch the rise of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and Finn Balor, Hideo Itami, that class of NXT, and that was really what got me through to today. Like I loved that era of NXT. WWE itself, not so much, but like I got to see Enzo and Cass when they were in their prime. I got to see Baron Corbin when he was undefeated. I got to see Samoa Joe show up in WWE for the first time. Shinsuke Nakamura. That was just a really good time with a really strong developmental roster.
great memories there. It's making me think as well. Back the old that class of NXT that brought back some happy memories for me there. So, going just on this little history lesson and looking through the looking glass, was there one feud, one match, one moment back then that you still remember to this day? I mean, that you fondly remember to this day, Mark?
Um, I don't have to stay in the old school, do I? Can I stay more with the cool kids and the more
Yeah,
modern?
it could be just not too modern. Not in the next or the last, I don't know, 3 years. Well, since the site's been around.
Oh boy. Okay, well that's not fair. But okay. Nothing in the last 3 years.
Is it just one big memory? It's like my one. It's really really old, but I remember Warrior beating Honky Tonk Man for the IC. That's my one big memory. So much stuff has happened, and more important stuff has happened since then. But for me, that's just one memory that instantly pops into my mind, and I'm like, yeah, happy memories. Well, looking back on it, maybe not so happy memories because he was stiff as whatever. But that's that thing. Is there anything for you just instantly, bang, it's there, front and center in your mind?
If you need a moment,
go for it,
I have mine.
Yeah, go for it.
WrestleMania 20. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit standing tall as the champions while the confetti rains down. That was like the culmination of everything I ever wanted since I was a kid. Or I guess it was 2004. I would have been 11. But like everything I just spent the last 5 years watching.
Yeah, that was perfect. I don't think there's been a moment as perfect as that since, and I don't think there ever will be, because I don't think they will invest in two guys that close ever again. But that's a story for another time. But you're right. That's just one moment you said it. All of a sudden, I'm transported back to watching it live over here in the UK, and I kid you not, I had tears rolling down my face. I was not. Yeah, I wasn't expecting Eddie to come into the ring. I was expecting Chris to just, celebrate his championship. And oh man, that was awesome.
I'm holding back from welling up right now.
What about you, Mark? Have you got one?
WrestleMania 18.
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay.
So, as a Canadian, I'm not typically a fan of really either guy. Like, I can't say he was my favorite. I mean, I could listen to a Rock promo all night long, but to see 50,000, maybe 60,000 people just switch and just turn on the Rock and all go old school. That from a fan's perspective, not being a fan and just watching that reaction and seeing like, I can't believe they just did this. They just turned Hogan face. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to stand in the ring and soak in and create an iconic moment.
That's also a thing that we like to do in Canada.
Yeah, it is.
Bizarro World.
High five.
Yeah. Good old Bizarro World.
Yeah.
Bizarro World. We are Bizarro World. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's other places in the States that are Bizarro World, like Philadelphia.
Yes.
But you are definitely in Bizarro World when you're in Canada, because we will not take WWF's guff. we brook none of it.
Nope.
And I guess that also kind of dates back to when they tried to turn Brett heel, and Canada just wasn't having it.
Yeah. No.
That was really good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that storyline. The fact that he was just a hero in his country, and everywhere else in the world he was a heel. It was different. It was something that hadn't been done before. It was, admittedly, that it had to be like that because the Canadian crowd forced their hand. But that was great.
Yeah, you talk about WrestleMania 18. That's one of the early WrestleManias I remember watching, and I also remember Chris Jericho losing the Undisputed Championship that night. So conflicting emotions for me there.
I won't go into detail about how I feel about that match. There's a listener who's a close friend of mine, Mr. O. He's a massive Hogan fan. He said that's one of the greatest things ever. Admittedly, it is one of the greatest things ever, but as a match, it doesn't hold up. But sorry, Mr. O. Sorry, Hogan fans and everyone else. So we're gonna take a quick break from walking down memory lane, and we're gonna pass this over to the Pro Wrestling Post head honcho, the editor-in-chief, my good buddy Marc Madison, who's going to give you some future and past pieces that we've got coming on the site. This past week has been completely mad on the site because we have the 7 Nights of Fright series. We touched on this briefly last week. What exactly has gone out and what's to come?
Okay, so as we recorded, we've had a return of one of our longer-standing writers that he typically covers one promotion, and I said, "Well, what about this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could do that." So somebody that didn't get a chance to write in like 6 months has put out 3 pieces in a week. So good on him for that. So Bill Potts has put out. We've had one piece on vampires. They are wrestling's gothic mercenaries. That came out today. He's put out a piece on the boogeyman and how he's coming to get you, and then one on Papa Shango and the ties to voodoo and how that would create fear. And it's, I guess, some how the stereotype actually in it doesn't necessarily work today. So those have been the 3 pieces that he's put out. I've had fortune of writing about Leatherface, and we touched upon it last week, and how it was former WWF wrestler Corporal Kirshner who went to Japan and embraced this gimmick and character, and then it's had various run-ins and relationships with other on-screen horror characters in the ring too. So those have been the 5 that have gone out. We've also had one on the Great Muta. Alec Podgorski has also put out a wonderful piece on this particular element of Muta, where it's not with his it's not with his makeup, but with his mask, and how he's created fear, and that's all tied to the legacy of this character, and it's been wonderful. We are going to have a couple of other pieces coming out. We have one piece coming out tomorrow on Kevin Sullivan and his Army of Darkness, and how the things that he did in the early 80s would be poo-pooed today. Very much so. Everything from domestic violence to lynching to some really cutthroat things that wouldn't be as acceptable. But really, he had praised Satan and how he embraced him, and how that was in a Catholic area not going to go over very well. So it really created fear and shock, and was at the time very much cutting edge. So that is what's coming out. We hope to have a couple of other pieces. I don't want to spill the beans yet, because if something for whatever reason doesn't pan out, I'd feel sad about it. We will have a piece on Mankind and his origins coming out as well. So this is what we know. We could have a couple of surprises coming out. Just stay tuned to the site.
And Pete mentioned him a few moments ago. Mr. John Hill, he has a piece coming up soon. I think it comes out Sunday, is it?
He does. John, one of our resident Joshi experts, talks about Mayu Iwatani and her rise to stardom as the brightest star of stardom, and fans and readers can look forward to her ascent to the top come Sunday. It's a wonderful piece. Thank you, John, for writing it.
Fantastic. As always, the pieces will be on the site or are on the site already, and I and Mark and Pete.
Oh, sorry, one others.
Whoa. Slow up.
I completely forgot.
Uh-oh. What have we forgot?
One other. Part 4 of Georgia Madden's History of Bullet Club is coming out this coming Monday.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, very excited about that. It's Georgia, who is our resident AEW reviewer, covers our weekly independent wrestling, is bringing back part 4. We are soon to have her on as a guest once this series is complete. Just think there's a part 5 and potentially a part 6. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's coming out on Monday.
Can I plug something while we're here?
Hey, wouldn't be the same without you, mate.
Wouldn't be the same without it.
Well, brace for Impact every Monday, where I do the Impact Wrestling review. But I have a new feature. That's right, I have 2 features. I'm unstoppable. It's called the Impact Assessment. It's the Weekly Impact Wrestling Review. So read my features.
Yes, plural, folks. Plural. There is 2. He has one on Tuesday and one. Is it Tuesday it goes out?
I have one on Monday. I have one on Wednesday.
Monday and Wednesday is Pete Moon days on Pro Wrestling Post. We'll We'll adjust the site's Twitter and everything else for those days, just to remind you all.
Yeah, just call them the Pete Moon Post.
The Pete Moon.
Flip the W upside down. It'll be okay.
Work for Miz, I guess. I don't know.
Don't even get me started on the Miz. Do not get me started on the Miz.
Oh,
okay. We're going to talk about him and the WWE now in a minute. But yeah, before I get too angry, again, let's those pieces are always on the site, and myself, Mark, and Pete, and every writer on the site urge you to read them. They are fantastically written and deserve to be read by your beautiful, beautiful eyes out there, folks. Now, as I may have just alluded to there, we are stepping away from WWF/WWE's past, and we're bringing it to right now. We're going to talk about the Hell in a Cell. We're going to talk about Raw after Hell in a Cell, and we're going to talk about the next 30 days in the run-up to Survivor Series. Now, if you didn't know, and your head's been buried in a hole somewhere, this Survivor Series, this year's Survivor Series even, will mark 30 years to the day that The Undertaker debuted. Now, I'm not too sure what is going on with WWE celebrating it on the actual day, but on the run-up to it, they're talking about Taker a lot. And as much as I love Taker, and we all love Taker, let's not take away, the fact that Hell in a Cell was actually pretty damn good. I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised. That's 2 in a row now for pay-per-views that they've pleasantly surprised me with. Boys, Mark, Pete, what did we think? Pete, Hell in a Cell, I'm gonna say it right now, Roman Reigns. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I saw bits of that of the ending where the Usos kind of came out and pleaded with Roman Reigns. Unexpected emotional moment, really. And I think that's the kind of thing that they've been trying to do on and off for the past 2-3 years, and I think this is the first time they ever really nailed it. I think they tried to do something similar when they with the Jason Jordan Kurt Angle storyline. They almost had it, but no, that one when they got the emotional crescendo right on the head when the Usos were kind of like talking to Roman about like what's happened to you, man? This isn't who you supposed. This isn't who we know. This isn't our cousin anymore.
Yeah, he was sat there in not rocking backwards and forwards, but he was looking into distance, saying he doesn't even know who he is anymore. And wow, it was pretty powerful stuff. And in my eyes, it worked. There's rumours going around now that he's going to enlist the Usos as part of his new stable. Whether or not that comes to pass,
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, Mark, Hell in a Cell. Is there anything on there that could have topped that, or did you like it all? Was there anything you didn't like?
I enjoyed it. A little disappointed by Drew's title reign ending, but I mean, if this was going to be it for Orton, is the idea that McIntyre gets his chance in front of a crowd come WrestleMania next year. Like, does he win it again or something?
Don't go saying stuff like that.
Really...
Don't go saying stuff like that, because we mentioned this weeks ago. We mentioned this that he Drew's going to lose the title and then regain the title in a packed stadium somewhere. So don't tease me with this just for it to be taken away.
Sorry.
Don't do it.
Okay, can we edit that? Who's ever handling the editing duties, please delete, cut. Well, the Reigns Uso crescendo, the way that was drawn together. Although I don't think my wife is a fan now of often seeking, like, you guys consult you as leaders, you okay this kind of behavior? Like, it's his son, it's his dad. You're proud that your son does what he follows in your footsteps, but whatever. Sasha and Bailey, yeah, that was fun. That was her from the stomping on her hand. I'm getting flashbacks to NXT Brooklyn and her stomping on the hand. And so if she passed over that or gave Bailey the rub, Sasha did, and Bailey winning the title, it was friend giving back to friend. And I don't think the storyline is done anytime yet. It could easily go on to WrestleMania or go in different paths and then come back together. But it's just too bad that it's happened in front of no crowd. I would have loved to have seen what this would have been
Yeah,
like
the
then.
payoff should have been in front of a crowd, but circumstances have presented that, and we saw it play out on pay-per-view at home instead, or if you were lucky enough on watching it in the Thunderdome itself. Okay, can I go off on one about the Miz?
Go for
Go
it.
for it.
Have we rewound the clock 10 years? Have we really rewound the clock 10 years? Because Orton's now champ and Miz is the goddamn Money in the Bank briefcase holder. What, how, why, when? This is so annoying.
I
So
think
annoying.
they're listening to you, Mark.
Sorry?
I think they're listening to you. Now, maybe Pete can correct me, because I can certainly remember a certain John Morrison hitting a platform and holding back the Miz, and I can't quite remember who it was. It said something along those lines. Do you know, Mark, who that might be?
I don't understand where they're going to go. The Miz, of all people, The Miz. Yeah, the guy can cut a great promo. The guy can is how can I put it? He's good in the ring, but as Money in the Bank title holder with Orton now as champion, it's like I said, the clock has been rewound 10 years, and then Otis, all that big fanfare when Otis actually, I say won in inverted air quotes here, won the Money in the Bank briefcase back at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. He was supposed to be something different, and then Vince got bored of his new toy and left him to fester in the corner. I don't know why it's Miz. Nothing against him as such. I just don't know why it's Miz. Does anyone here know?
I was gonna hold my this opinion back until we got to the Royal Rumble, but considering it has to do with the Money in the Bank, this has to do with the Money in the Bank briefcase, they may as well just talk about it now. I think that Money in the Bank, the briefcase, works better for heels, because it works better for heels than, say, like the Royal Rumble. Because in the Royal Rumble, there's 30 other guys. You got to eliminate everybody. Unless you come in at like late in the match, it doesn't really work for a heel. Whereas in Money in the Bank, you don't even have to pin anyone. You just climb a ladder, grab a briefcase. And I think there are times when that's worked with baby faces, but I think even then it gets kind of formulaic because whenever a baby face has the Money in the Bank briefcase, they tend to call their shot.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
That's the honest thing to do.
exactly. Otis didn't really seem like he had a plan to call his shot. Didn't really seem like he had a plan on who to challenge. He seemed like he was just more interested in having fun with Tucker. Now, have we necessarily turned the clock back 10 years? Depends on who Miz cashes in on. Though the fact that he has a successful cash in on Randy Orton already makes me a little leery about it. But yeah, I think that it is certainly better to have Money in the Bank on a heel. That it's the Miz, I kind of see where you're going.
The guy has done nothing. He's been stuck in the mid card of the tag team division, if you can call it that. And all of a sudden, we've got to take him seriously as a main event player after however many years out of the main event scene. Nah, I'm calling BS on that. Sorry, cannot get behind that whatsoever. It sounds and smells of desperation booking just to get the Money in the Bank briefcase off of Otis. It could have gone to Elias if we're going down the heel route. It could have gone to a whole number of people.
Jeff Hardy or
Yeah.
Sheamus. I
Sheamus,
think the idea is if all of your champions now are heels, then he could just be a temporary placeholder. Like he could be holding the briefcase and never really get a chance to defend it and then lose it right back to Otis.
But
because
then
now we've got...
sorry, mate. It makes a mockery of the whole getting the Money in the Bank briefcase.
It does.
To have it shot it all over the place.
Consider the only time this has happened before with Mr. Kennedy. Like, it makes me wonder, did Otis do something?
Well, like I said, it was well documented that Otis won Money in the Bank because Vince saw big things in him. And then as soon as he won it, it was literally, he was pushed to one side after his little get together with Mandy Rose and then forgotten about. So maybe something did happen backstage, or just Vince just lost interest like he normally does.
So of everyone else who was in Money in the Bank, who would you have given it to?
What, in the Money in the Bank match back in April, wherever it was, March, April?
Yes.
I would have given it to Aleister Black.
All right.
No questions asked. Straight away, Aleister Black, because they were just building him up, and that would have validated him, and they could have built on him even more going forward, and hopefully would have cashed it in or done something with it by now. But that's where I was going.
Oh boy, I just read something. Is it even worth sharing? I don't know.
I don't know. You haven't said what it is.
So you know how the WWE has a tendency of wanting to drop a portion of a name?
Yeah.
So apparently Matt Riddle will now be called Riddle.
Oh, give over.
I'm not sure if he's going to tell jokes. I'm not sure if he's going to wear green and question marks, but he's going to go by Riddle.
See, that works out right, because
apparently
Chad Gable's now Chad Gable again, not Shorty G. So someone on the roster had to lose their name. That's what it is.
I just fear the day when Aleister Black becomes just plain old Al.
Al. Do you remember Al Black? Yeah, God, he was great. He was Al Black. Bless him.
Yeah. Oh, I could see him tagging with Al Snow.
They'd be Black Snow.
Oh my word!
Cool name for a tag team.
Well, that's all. Wasn't that also one of Booker T's nicknames?
Black Snow.
Somebody was Black Snow.
Wow,
I know there's Black Rain, and that was Dusty Rhodes.
That was Dustin Rhodes, yeah.
Dustin Rhodes, yeah, it was Black Rain back in the TNA.
Yeah, wrestler. I just looked up Black Snow wrestler, and it was Booker T.
Nice.
Oh, it was okay.
Good knowledge. See, once again, folks, we educate and entertain. So we move on from Hell in a Cell, which once again, as you may have heard, it was greatly appreciated by us all here at the Pro Wrestling Post. We go forward to Monday Night Raw, even the very next day, and the big thing in my eyes here is the complete and utter continuation burial of Retribution. Thoughts, opinions, screams down the mic. Carry on, you two.
Listen to the old episodes.
Yes, go back to the archives. Listen to every single one of them because we talk about it quite a lot. But
yeah, we did.
But come on, after what happened on Monday, there's literally now no way for them to come back.
At least Hurt Business looks good.
You
Which
pinched my line.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
It
cool.
means good. It means good things for. It means good things for Shelton Benjamin.
In case you listeners at home haven't seen Raw or don't keep up to date with it or anything, there was a tag team elimination match this past Monday night. It was the Hurt Business of MVP Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexandra, and Bobby Lashley against Retribution. And the Hurt Business went over Retribution in quite a dominant fashion. And I legitimately cannot see a way forward for Retribution to be taken seriously. Am I alone in thinking this? Can either one of you see a way out, or are they just toast now?
I've been saying they were toast since day 2.
You have, yeah. That's Pete's opinion. What's yours, Mark?
Nothing short of a miracle. Like, unless they're gonna have a 4-on-4 at Survivor Series, and that's where they end up using nefarious means, and then these other Retribution members pop up from everywhere to help them to win. That's the only way I see them gaining a sense of something. But the build up to this point, how can you, right? If you're trying to, I've really wanted them to work. I really have. I'm like excited for the potential of Mustafa Ali, and like, it's just, there's a point where you have to like say, it's just not working. Like, it's not me, it's you. And
Yeah. How true is that?
and they continue to disappoint. They continue to disappoint.
You've all heard me mainly talk about long-term booking on this pod. We are 3 months in, episode 12, folks. I really don't know what their idea was with Retribution. From the moment they got thrown together, to me, to everyone else, there was no clear vision of how they wanted this group to be or an end game. It's game over for Retribution, I'm afraid. But then, now we've said this, they will turn around and bite us in the arse. We'll be here next week saying, bloody hell, how good were Retribution? They're so amazing.
Well, not next week. In 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks, yes. Yes, in 3 weeks' time. Not much else really happened on Raw. There was a few bits of storyline progression with obviously Drew and Orton and a few bits and bobs. So let's jump ahead, folks. Let's go forward to Survivor Series. Have you seen the matches announced for Survivor Series, folks?
Yep.
Yes.
You have,
Lots
right.
of title versus title. That seems to be like their
brand. Yeah, it's brand versus brand again. So we have the Raw Women's Champion, Asuka, against SmackDown Women's Champion, Sasha Banks. That should be a good match. We have the United States Champion, Bobby Lashley, against the Intercontinental Champion, Sami Zayn. And it's always great to see Sami on the card. Then we have the Raw Tag Team Champions, The New Day, against SmackDown Tag Team Champions, Street Profits, which they kind of teased when they handed over the titles a few weeks back. And then we have the traditional 5-on-5 elimination matches. I'm not going to go down too much into it because the SmackDown superstars haven't been announced yet, which I would imagine.
We're still missing 2 members from Team Raw's the men's Team Raw. Yeah.
So we won't talk about them that much. But what is anything there take your fancy? Is anything great looking at push? What if you had the book? How would you book this? Screw it.
Add NXT.
Screw what you think about the matches now. I've told you, lovely listeners, what they are. Let's do a tiny bit. Let's do 10 minutes of fantasy booking. Pete, how would you book Survivor Series, bearing in mind it is Taker's 30th?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Like, I wouldn't know what to do with Taker's 30th other than like maybe announce him for next year's Hall of Fame. But they've already, have they even done this year's Hall of Fame ceremony yet?
No, it's been postponed, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a real difficult one. I would say maybe if the Fiend Bray Wyatt is on Team Raw and he's like the last man standing, that would be an interesting way to kind of like highlight the similarities and how they're both the spooky magic using types.
That's cool.
I'm just going to talk about how I would book. Let's talk about how I book the matches individually. I don't really know what to do with the team with the women's Survivor Series 5-on-5, just because we still don't know who's going to be on Team SmackDown.
Yeah.
I'd have Bobby Lashley over Sami Zayn, just because, you know, you look at the two and you think that's just how it goes down, and especially since Sami doesn't really have people in his corner. I would let the New Day versus the Street Profits kind of be like the low key barn burner, because I think those two teams are just so fun and charismatic that you could just kind of let them do their thing, let them be entertaining. I would say Sasha Banks beats Asuka, just because Sasha's won most recently, and I think it's important that she looks strong. And it doesn't really matter how I would book Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton. Reigns is probably going to take the victory.
Yeah.
Just because they wanted to put so much sheen on the Universal Championship.
Yeah, bang on there.
Yeah.
There's the way that Reigns has been since aligning himself with Paul Heyman. He's being shot to the moon in the right way, in my opinion, this time. What about you, Mark? Is there anything different to that to Pete's picks?
No, I like his range over Orton win. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for why that would happen. He's got the support of potentially the Usos falling in line to aid him. You've got potentially the Fiend being involved in some way, because they seem to be teasing of something there. If there's any bad blood still with Drew McIntyre, I mean, there's lots of reasons for why Reigns would win. I don't know so much about Asuka losing. I feel like there's more of a reason for Sasha to lose because of animosity on the part of Bayley costing her.
Okay.
That's the only reason why I would have think that she's got a reason to get back at her, right? You took away the most important thing that meant something to me. I'll do the exact same thing. Now you won't lose a title, but you're not a superior champion because the other champion beat you. So there's that argument. The idea of the low key barn burner, I like that, between New Day and Street Profits. With it being 30 years of Taker, I wonder if we might see the reliving of a feud, or those that want to step up and make some sort of a statement. Maybe we do see a Fiend altercation with the Undertaker. It doesn't necessarily have to be leading to a match, but he tries to poo-poo on this 30 years. Somebody's going to try to spoil the parade, right? Who's it going to be? Who's going to be the one to either step up or step out? So, as far as Sami Zayn, yeah, that makes the most sense. Although he doesn't have friends, and it would be funny if the one friend he's been friends with, because I don't think they really had a unceremonious split. It's Kevin Owens coming to his aid.
Okay.
You know, I don't remember them really having a. I think they were just separated, and there was injuries that happened, and that's what kind of pulled
Well,
them away.
you also see that Kevin Owens has kind of become the everyman babyface, whereas Sami Zayn is now still kind of the obnoxious heel.
Yep.
I just think that would be a weird shift for Owens, at least at the moment.
Here's what I would do. Here's what I would do. With the Taker and the Fiend, I reckon you're onto something there. Could there be, because he hasn't actually come out and said that he's done. There's still no official confirmation saying that he's retired. Could there possibly be even a kind of passing of the torch where Taker not bows out, but he says that, you know, gives the Fiend the rub that he is the next kind of, as you said, the next supernatural kind of entity as he takes the long walk to the back. I mean, what perfect way to retire than 30 years to the day that you debuted? That's something I could see happening. With the traditional elimination matches, I've said this last year, obviously I didn't say this to you two, but I said this to all my wrestling buds over here. There needs to be stakes, because at the moment this we're a better brand than you crap doesn't work. It's forgotten about the very next week after Survivor Series. I read somewhere, I don't know, it might have been Taz, I can't remember, on his show. There needs to be something on the line. I'm sure he said that the winner of the winning brand of the Survivor Series match gets the number 30 pick in the Royal Rumble. So Raw would want to win it. So one of their guys would be 30, SmackDown, vice versa. Or I would up that and say that the people, whoever is standing, because it's normally like a sole survivor now. It has been for quite a while. Whoever is the sole survivor is the number 30 at the Royal Rumble. That's what I would do. I would book it that way, just to give it some stakes.
In the men's and the women's, right?
In the men's and the women's, I would book the winner to be the number 30. Or if there is, two survivors or whatever, I would on the very next SmackDown or Raw, I would put them two, and they would fight it out to be the number 30.
And does the loser get 29?
Loser goes back in the pack and draws a number.
Wow. All that work for nothing.
Exactly.
Good idea. Yeah, good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do. So I'm sure Taz said this on one of his pods a year or two ago. So I'm just running with Taz's thing. Please don't send him to me, because he's rather grumpy. So there we go, folks. This is our first of 3 new formats where we've, as you've just heard, we've gone back to the past. We've talked about what got us into the promotion, played it forward, and spoke about what we expect in the future. I've rather enjoyed this, guys. It's been different. It's been a good conversation. There's lots of good memories brought up and some tearful ones. But yeah, it's been really good. So hopefully, as long as you two are all right with this, we'll carry this on next week. And next week, we shall be talking about a very young company that not long turned one. We're going to talk about AEW in the run-up to Full Gear. Is that all right with you two?
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, sure.
Excellent. So there we go, folks. Next week is all about AEW. You have heard it here first. We shall obviously be plugging on our socials. And talking about our socials, see what I did there? It's time to go home. And I'm going to pass it over to Pete. Pete, what's your socials, mate?
You can find me on Twitter, at Pete Probably. You can read my features, plural, both of them. Brace for Impact on Monday and the Impact Assessment on Wednesday. And you can find me delivering post for UPS, hopefully.
Yes, come on, UPS. You know it makes sense. And yourself, Mark, where can we find you?
One of many places, I'm hoping. And one of them being our site Twitter is at Pro Wrestling PST. Can I buy a vowel, Alex? And we also have
Wrong show,
my personal one. Sorry?
Wrong show, mate.
Oh, you're right. What was it?
That's
Wheel of
Jack.
Fortune, isn't it? That's Patsy
Yeah.
Jack. Oh, darn it. See, I don't watch enough television, I guess. It felt right at the time, and yet clearly I dropped it. My own personal Twitter at the Marc Madison, or you can reach us on Instagram at Pro Wrestling Post, or you can follow us on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Pro Wrestling PST. Thank you to our over 3,000 likes. Please continue to like, follow us, show us the love. We are the combination of new school, old school, and going back to school.
Oh, that was smooth. That was really
Was it?
smooth.
Was it?
Yeah, I like that. I can be found on Twitter at Mark Blake PWP. The pod itself can be found on Twitter at PWP_pod. Please, as we've said already today, go and read our 7 Nights of Frights series. There's some wonderful pieces on there. I am super looking forward to Mankind, as I didn't actually know it was happening until about 30 seconds before you guys did. And as you all know, I'm a huge Mick Foley mark, so I'm looking forward to this. And as always, you can download the podcast from your usual podcast providers. Please be so nice to give us a rate and review. That would be fantastic. We need the money to pay them bills. So until next week, where we shall be talking about AEW. Adios.
Hasta luego.
Ciao.